Welcome to There Is Only One Truth, Self-Dev. We are two odd-age punk rockers. Me, Tommy, a Taoist and seeker, and some other guy. He's a personal development coach and creator of the world's first self-help virtual coaching program. My mentor, Tony, that bastard. This podcast is about success, spirituality, and bettering yourself. That's the best way to change the world. And with continued listening, that's what you will do.
Tommy, I want you to do something for me.
Yes, what's that?
Now, we've known each other a long time. I want you to do something for me.
Yeah.
Lose my number, all right? Just lose my number.
What?
Lose my number. You heard me.
What could I have possibly done this time?
Lose my number!
What? Why?
Lose my number! The first time I heard someone say that to me, I was like, oh my God, this is like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I was like, how awful to say that to me. Lose my number. You don't want to have the relationship anymore. It's over. It was like, I was aghast.
Yeah.
And listeners, in case you knew or don't know what's going on, now it's like a new tradition for Tommy and I, for me to start the podcast with some psychological jab that either I've invented or I've just borrowed and used. Like, I didn't invent this one, but this is and I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying you should say this. I'm just this is a psychological podcast. So I love psychology. It's my favorite subject. So you can make a collection of the psychological jabs that I talk about here, and you'll have a nifty arsenal to use against people. I mean, could you imagine hearing that from someone you really care about? Lose my number. God, it's just awful. And that's I've had a relationship, and certainly ones that are of lesser importance to me, where a person just wanted to end the relationship, and it's like that's like a death. That's like sudden death. It's really no difference. That's one of the hardest feelings to deal with, is a sudden loss of something you value greatly, and that could be death, or that could be betrayal. Internally, emotionally, that's the same frigging feeling. It's the same thing. Sudden loss of what you treasured. Okay, whether it be a person living, now they're dead, or a person living in a relationship now wants out of the relationship, or or is not truthful or insincere, or not who you thought he or she was. Yeah. It's the
so
same.
Extreme. It's so extreme.
It's the same emotional experience. And we're going to get into this more, because it happens that the topic of this podcast, the theme and topic of this podcast, is now addiction and recovery. And it wasn't going to be. Tommy and I met last night, and we figured out what today's podcast will be about, which wasn't about addiction and recovery at all. It wasn't any of the topics. But today is a special day for me. Tommy, you want to tell our listeners, our viewers, what today is for me? Sorry to be so selfish.
Today, Tony is 20 years clean and sober. He's free from addiction.
No, stop. You're embarrassing me. Stop. No, don't stop.
Honored.
Don't.
I'm happy and honored to talk about this and be a part of it. I didn't know how to phrase it usually, because there's so many different terms, like, I'm clean, or I could be abstinent, or I could be,
right.
But I would say you're clean. I would say you're clean and sober.
There's a lot of confusion. And I say that's very accurate. And there's a lot of confusion and ambiguity about that, and the different standards from different groups.
Right.
And you know what? Let's give the listeners and viewers a real treat here. Now, you guys may know Tommy and I are good friends, and we have this relationship, which is something of a mentor and protege. And we were good friends. And then Tommy dropped out of my life, and then he came back in. I said, get on Facebook. He saw I was doing Facebook Lives about Zen. He loves that because he's a Zen practitioner himself, or something of a Zen practitioner, like I am, something, but much less so than he is. And I said, okay, he said, let's make videos together. And they said, let's make a podcast. And here we are. There's the real quick bio on that. But if you guys want to know how we began our relationship, which was the opposite of lose my number, Tommy, do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, I'll tell it. Hey, can I please have your number? It was one of sponsee. I met Tony, and we met each other in the rooms of recovery of Narcotics Anonymous, to be precise. And that's why, to me, the relationship, of course, we're friends first and foremost, but I have always considered Tony to be not only a mentor, because our first relationship was that of a person guiding me through turmoil and growth in my life. So, and that's initially how I've grown to know Tony. And then, of course, becoming friends along the way, putting all that other stuff aside, we can, it's not always about, learning and guiding and teaching.
One of the things I think drew you to me is we have so much in common. Which is an important thing in a friendship, and it's good for a sponsor-sponsee relationship, but it's not necessary at all. In a sponsor-sponsee relationship, the sponsee simply has to want what the sponsor has. They don't need more than that. But it's great to have commonality.
At the time, you had 7 years clean.
Oh yeah.
And that was enough of a requirement for me to approach you and ask you. And I saw in Tony what I wanted to see in myself years down the line. And
I've got to say, Tommy, you were the worst sponsee I ever had in my life. Actually, I came close to using several times in sponsoring you. I'm totally kidding. Quite frankly, I don't know if any sponsee I've ever had has had long-term recovery. I don't know. They may or may not have.
Right.
And you may say, oh, that's a testament to you, Tony. No, it's not. A person's recovery is a testament to themselves. And don't get me wrong, I got clean and sober through AA and NA. And quite frankly, I outgrew them. I was always a controversial person because I'm outspoken and I'm honest. And I have my own ideas of recovery. I'm very into psychology, as you probably are aware. And, I talked about my ideas of recovery. Like I remember in early recovery, I said it was a meeting at The War Is Over, the old home group, that I'm like, I figured out how recovery works. I said that in the share. And I heard all the laughter in the room. People are laughing because people have in the rooms of AA and NA, people like to regard it as some mystery, as some magic. If you get this magic, if the invisible hand of God touches you, you can stay sober, which is of course all ridiculous, because the truth is that we're all touched by God, we're all blessed by God, all right? And there is no magic. There is you want to get clean, you get clean. You don't want to, you don't. Now, do I mean that simplistically? Yes, that's the simplistic distillation of it. But I figured out what it was. Why recovery works is because people collected to focus on recovery. In life, you get what you focus on. You focus on recovery, you get recovery. You focus on using, you get using. And this is not rocket science. And it became apparent to me. And indeed, I'm a life coach. Well, I had a life coaching practice, which I closed. I'm a personal development coach. But it really, that was me as a sponsor. Was the infancy or the gestation of me wanting to become a personal development coach because of helping people. I was an amateur, if you will. I don't say that in any condescension. I was an amateur at helping people, and I wanted to turn pro, become a certified coach, a practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, which I was into in the 90s, and I didn't get certified in that until 2012. So 17 years, right? So before I finally took the plunge on that. but I love helping people. And, and one of the things you learn in the rooms, sponsoring people and just in general, is that you can't help anyone who doesn't want to be helped, which I think is more or less the truth, but there can be certain exceptions in extremely rare circumstances. And I'm working on something like that, which is it's tabled right now. It's backburnered because I'm working on more important things right now. I'm working on my company Auxilium, delivering to the market the world's first self-help virtual coaching program. I created this new kind of coaching called self-help coaching, where a person can just use self-help and actually have it work, and not work, which is the typical effect. There's our 10-minute marker.
10 minutes.
But now I got distracted.
You're talking about Proficio.
Oh yeah, and the other important thing is one truth. Is this podcast right here? This is important to me. So and this is a new thing. In life, you got to be adaptable. You got to be flexible. There was, before a few months ago, there was no such thing as there is only one self-truth, self-dev. Tommy and I created it, and now it's become very important, and we're committed to the success of it. And that's how you get clean and successful in recovery, by the way, my friends, is that you commit to it. Now, whatever the commitment is, that's what's required. And if you can only commit to staying clean or in recovery for an hour, okay, great. But at the end of an hour, you better be willing to renew for another hour. And if you're going to go that way, okay, if that works for you, okay, great. If it doesn't, then you better find another way that works, because it's all about finding what works and making some level of commitment. I made a commitment to myself. By the way, you hear this podcast now. Tommy and I also, as a supplement to this podcast, we go live every morning on Facebook. And this morning's video was about this, it was almost impromptu, about addiction and recovery, because today is my 20-year marker. I don't celebrate, my anniversary. I used to be in AA and NA, like I said, and I don't, there was a lot of disagreements, which is a funny thing. Some people would call me an NA Nazi, as they say, is this term that has nothing to do with fascism, but about being really regimented to the NA way. And other people would call me a renegade. So which is it? Was I a renegade or was I a Nazi? This depends on who you asked when, right? So what I'm saying there is everybody has their opinion and their perception, which is fluid. The truth is I'm just a person, all right? And but in terms of celebration, I talked about this in the Facebook Live, and I want to avoid repeating myself. So if you want to hear more about addiction and recovery and NA and AA and celebrations, see today's what's today's date? Today is the 18th.
18.
The Facebook Live on the Facebook page on One Truth. And I talked about how celebrations is not. It's good to have, but that should not be the focus at all. You shouldn't, and we should say you should not focus on counting time. Oh, I got another day clean. I got, every day you add another one, or you got 10 years, 20 years. And they're great, the markers, and in the social groups you should have the celebrations. Yes, I do agree with that. I'm not poo-pooing that, but I'm saying there's way too much focus on that. The focus should be on today in reference to your last day. That's it. That's what it should be. Not about the future, which is conceptual, but about a past which is known and a present, which is the only time you can do anything. For example,
the last day you used.
The last day you used, or last day you used, or the first day you didn't. In the NA and AA are based, are 12-step fellowships based on the 12-step methodology, which I've said for the longest time is the greatest methodology I've seen for self-improvement for fucked up people I've ever seen. and I was one of them, I was one of them. And I don't say that with any superiority, but I'll also add to that, and the basic 12-step model is that you're broken and you always will be broken, which I more and more, I saw that is the wrong model to have. And that's why recovery rate is so, quite frankly, dismal in AA and NA. AA is a little higher one than NA because they are the big daddy. There's like 100 different 12-step organizations, all based on AA. AA came first by Bill W. and Dr. Bob in the 1930s. They started right here in New York and Cleveland, New York and Ohio. And so, and it's a wonderful thing. But the third step is the main thing, how you really get clean or stay clean. And that's by putting your faith in a higher power. And the way I have observed and experienced it, both in myself and experienced it with others, is that having faith that a higher power is going to keep you clean only ever works right now. Right now, this moment. So the magic can only be wielded right now. It can't be like today I got 20 years clean and sober, right, in my past. I can't, okay, now if I use today, I will use today. And I'll still have that, the record is clear, I have 20 years clean and sober, and that's the truth, but it's not gonna, that 20 years won't keep me clean and sober today if I choose to use. Now, I've said for a long time, it's said that, you're always a decision away from using. But if you do enough recovery, you're many decisions away. Because I would never just decide to simply use, because I've so developed myself and repaired myself that to make such a terrible choice, would have to be preceded by other terrible choices. Because it's just terrible. It would be a terrible decision. I mean, just the idea of it is repulsive to me. The decision per se, the choice per se, is awful. And so you want to deal with reality. That's where it's at. The future is not real. It's a hope, right? And that's the good hope, right? Guess what? Look at what else comes in the future. Bad things too, right? So but the past, the past, there's no concept about the past. Now you can reframe it, look at it different ways, deliberately, yes, and that's a very useful thing to do. But the past is known, and you know about that last day or that first day. If you hold on to that in reference to today, because the magic is only wielded today, that's the key to staying clean and in recovery.
Mm-hmm. I thought the same thing. I thought the same exact thing, with the exception of focusing on the last time you used or the first day that you got clean. Like I thought, like this morning I had mentioned, the power is in the now. The magic is in the now. Well, that's what's going to keep you clean, is doing the next and best right thing right now. But I totally agree. In the rooms, they call it play the tape to the end or play the tape till it's through. That's remembering. Yeah, that's remembering the last time you used and how you bottomed out, or the emotions connected to that will help you stay clean. But what's even more paramount is utilizing this precious present moment and doing things that are positive with it, that will keep you clean, because you are ultimately immersed in doing something that is non-destructive. It's just going to make you feel wonderful about yourself and about helping other people. That's why service is huge in the rooms, because service, when you're of service to other people,
yes.
You're in the action.
Service is the structure and the jobs of people who run the groups, the organizations. Right. Absolutely. Right. You go from selfish to selfless, or
and all that accrued time, like you had mentioned. And then the final thing was, it's great to honor the milestone and to celebrate the milestone and the achievement. But it's not like accruing all that time is gonna get you an extra day clean. You know what I mean? So it's like there is a little too much focus on that. But
I think there's a lot too much focus, but I thank you for that. But it's like, what do you get? See, me, because I have 20 years of being sober or clean, of recovery behind me. So what I got to do is I got to have 20 years of having a clear mind and self-improving. By the way, I used to, and that adds up, that accrues. I used to define recovery as abstinence from drugs while self-improving. But then after about like 8 years clean in recovery, I revised that into just life. Because my life is all about self-improvement. And I don't mean as some sort of self-help junkie. I mean evolutionarily. I'm here to evolve. All right. Just as I was once you know, a zygote and a fetus, and I became birthed as an infant, a baby, right? And then I was a
Yeah.
small child and a larger child and a kid and an adolescent, an older adolescent, teenager, a young adult, an adult, and now I'm a middle-aged man, 55. That was a physical evolution, but there is a spiritual evolution, an evolution of the mind. I don't know about the soul. I think the soul is permanent, but I don't know. I don't know. But maybe the soul is more revealed because to oneself through this mind evolution. And it's all about evolution. All right. And I'm on an evolution. You know, I strive to be on a path of enlightenment. Sometimes I'm on it, sometimes I'm not, depending on how I'm operating. When I'm operating on a highly, I'm on the path. When I'm 20 minutes in. When I operate low, I'm not on the path. You know, I'm off taking a break, I'm in a cigarette or whatever. By the way, I'm off cigarettes too for a long time. Because that's one of the things, you know, I always, when I first came back, when I came into the rooms, you know, I was like, oh, I got to quit smoking too, because I could not reconcile. How can I quit destroying myself with cocaine and alcohol and whatever else are drugs and continue to kill myself with tobacco and nicotine, knowing also that that's the biggest killer in the world is tobacco, you know? Yeah. So talk about how every group sees things the way it wants to see it. When addiction is addiction, all right? It's the same thing. There's no, you know, I mean, you can, maybe one substance kills you quicker than another. Okay, yeah, totally. Yeah. But addiction is addiction, and it's just a self-destruction. It is something, it is that life, at one point, this is my premise of why people become addicts, and it doesn't matter what they're addicted to, behavioral, substance, doesn't matter, is that at one point in their lives, life became so awful, something happened, that they said to themselves on some level, and it may be subconsciously, probably not, but it probably was subconscious, and then it was such an awful decision that they quickly submerged it into the subconscious. And that is that life is so awful that it's better off to be dead or to destroy yourself. So at some point, and for me, having a good moment here, touch with my feelings real there, because I haven't talked about this in a long time, and it's nice to feel that. I can tell you about the origin is when my father left us children. We were 10 years old. I was 10 years old. I'm a middle child, and he left. He said he was leaving. My brother and my sister were there. I was standing in the middle. He said he was left. They were crying, bawling their eyes. He was leaving. I was stoic on the outside. Inside, it was like, I felt like I was a skyscraper building, you know, with like 20, 30 floors, and one floor fell on the one beneath it, and every floor kept falling, and my entire insides just destroyed from the top to the bottom, with a face that was stone. Wow. And that became that was a terrible destruction of this little boy who perceived it as an abandonment, you know, and not just myself, but of my siblings. But certainly it's about the self, you know, and psychologically it's about the self. And that sadness became, at some point as I grew, into a rage. And I had a rage for the world, which came from what? A rage towards myself. It didn't come from, the rage to the world didn't come first. The rage towards myself came first. And I became self-destructive, and I became a risk taker, really, you know, I could jump from high places and jump through windows and all kinds of shit, you know, and all kinds of shit to show you how crazy I was, because, you know, I felt crazy. And you know, that's what it's repairing that. It's reconciling with that. So going from a place where you don't want to, where destroying yourself or death is better than living, you have to go from there to the opposite, which is to accept yourself and what has happened to you and what you've done, and being okay with it, which is to say that you don't protest it. You don't protest it. This is it. This is how I am, and this is how it is, and it's okay. And now, what changes do I want to make? Okay.
So is that what you would call coming to terms with it?
I was coming to terms with the genesis of it. But
Okay.
then you got to come to terms with the things that you've done. What about the things that you've done? The harm that you've caused, the harm that you've received. You have to come to terms with that. The 12 steps of AA, all the 12-step fellowships, the 12-step are all about acceptance. Every one is about acceptance. The first step is where you admit that you got a problem, and the 12-step, which is about continued self-examination and spiritual connection. The first step is acceptance 101. The 12th step is acceptance 1201. All right, the 10th step is 1001. They're all about acceptance. They're just different levels of acceptance, where you accept yourself as you are and what you've done and what has happened to you and the world. You accept the world as it is only after you've accepted yourself as you are. You mentioned aesthetic realism this morning on this morning's Facebook Live, Tommy. This is why I like aesthetic realism, but I have an unreconcilable difference with them. Is that no, the outside doesn't come first. The inside comes first. Once you get good on the inside, then the outside will get good. The outside don't get good first. Inside gets good first.
Yeah, it's almost like they're looking for inspiration to get clean from the outside. It's not from within them. They don't look at it as I owe this to myself. It's like, well, if something this beautiful is out there, then I am inspired to get clean or to improve my life, to do it for them or to honor that or to gain that. I understand exactly what you're saying about aesthetic realism.
It's been my total experience that all this great stuff that on the outside is always preceded by great stuff on the inside. Always. Yeah. Right? In my own experience and in my own observation of others. There's a great saying, I think I've mentioned it before, is that all public victories are preceded by private victories. So you can change first yourself, and then the rest of the world will see it. Then others will see it, the change that you made. Okay. Okay. Now we see it, but which is related. So now here we are. All right. And Tommy and I are not in NA. You know, I started working on a document long ago for my sponsees because they always ask the same questions over and over. So I made this document, and I called it Fortress of Recovery.
Well, boot camp for recovery, you called it.
No, maybe did I? Well,
I think it was boot camp.
No, I know it's Fortress of Recovery. Maybe it started off with that.
Yeah.
But and then it was like 3 pages, then 7 pages. I think it's like right now it's like 50 pages. But I plan to making it into a book, but then I stopped because I mentioned the virtual coaching program, which is called Proficio. That's going to have down the road a recovery program, and so I'm just going to put it into that, and it'll be a compilation of a number of things. But you know, it doesn't matter. You know, Tommy earlier talked about, you know, different terms like sobriety and recovery and clean. You know, I've never, since Tommy came back into my life, and I'm so glad he did, because he was actually always one of my favorite people in the last 20 years. We have a lot in common, punk rock, and you know, he's not too ugly. But I never, when he came back in my life, and I never asked him if he's totally clean, which is, you know, NA clean. They would call NA clean as total clean. We don't, we don't
total abstinence.
You know, I never asked him because it's not my business and it's not important. You know, just because I really embraced being totally clean doesn't mean that that's the best for you, or if it's even not the best for you, that I should judge you. It's not for me. It's not for me to judge. You've got to live your life. That's it, period. Now, if I'm going to get into business with somebody, I'm going to want to know specific things because that's my prerogative. But, you know, so I don't need to know that stuff, man. You need to know that I think that's the best model. It's the toughest model, yes. But in that resilience, you build resiliency in being totally clean, where you don't soften reality with any sort of substance. And for you, the more you toughen yourself up, the more you can take quite frankly, when world gives you a good pummeling. All right.
Would you like to know my
Not if it's gonna piss me off, you son of a bitch. No, of course, yeah. If you want to tell me, I'd love to.
I'll divulge. I am completely clean. I have
Wow.
not. Yeah, I the last substance that I had a rendezvous with was cannabis, was marijuana back in 2016. And then after that, I realized there was nothing to it. You know, it's all about clarity of mind. It's all about focus. It's all about becoming, evolving. And you know what? A lot of people think that marijuana is a drug. I think
30
that's
minutes.
30. They think that's a drug that can open their mind, makes them peaceful. You know, it's a course corrector for many. If they're going to do something stupid, they change their mind. But it's just it never was for me. I never enjoyed it, and that was the last thing, and that was about going up 5 years ago now.
You and I should get together and just get like a whole bunch of crack and just go nuts, man. A bunch of money, hookers, crack for a week. You know?
Well, I mean, 20 years, you kind of deserve it now, don't you?
I deserve something. That's great, man. So I'm very glad to hear that, bro. That's great. Because, you know, again, it's your prerogative. But reality, if you can take reality just as it is, then you're a tough person. And I really value toughness in people. Male or female, doesn't matter. I really value that. And why? Because it's very useful and valuable to have tough people around you for when things get tough. When things get tough people can persevere and be victorious. People who are not tough will not be able to deal. They won't be able to roll with the blows, take the hits. They won't be able to get up when they fall down. Or they may, but not likely, because they haven't toughened themselves. Don't forget, you know, we're always preparing ourselves in life. In life, we have to live, but we're also always preparing ourselves simultaneously. For what? For what's to come. That's what for. Okay? You don't even know what's to come. But the more prepared you are, the better you can deal with it. And it's best to choose what that is. But always, you know, have some general preparation going on. And I want to finally talk about in recovery about, you know, one of the basic differences I have with me and 12 steps and 12-step fellowship. Even though there is a distinction between the 12 steps and the fellowship, because people being grossly imperfect, the 12 steps being perfectly worded as a methodology of self-improvement. You know, there's quite a difference between the two. There's a discrepancy between the two. But you know, I saw in early recovery that my recovery really was about, my addiction was about the separation of me and my potential. And that's what really screwed me more than anything. That I knew that I had so much potential and that I did not act on it. I did not bring it forth to the world. And that's I saw that. And I recognized that indeed Jesus Christ, and I say this very non-religiously, said that a man must bring forth what is within him or it will destroy him. And that was never lost on me. And I saw that, you know, there were so many people in the world that did so many great things. And then you ask yourself, well, why aren't I one of them? And that may not be, maybe you don't want to do great things. You don't want to be rich or famous or whatever. But whatever things that you want to do, that you aspire to, or, you know, things that you would like to achieve or become, why not? Why not? Why haven't you done it? That was a very persistent question for me. And I realized that the answer was because the great potential that I have and had, I did not bring it forth. So, and that ate at me. It ate at me all the time. It ate at me between hits on that crack rock, lines of coke, you know, drinks, booze, whatever, all of it. You know, hits of pot, which I needed just to wake up in the morning, you know, get, you know, so I saw that tapping into the potential was the real recovery. And NA or AA and 12-step, their basic mentality is that you're broken and you'll always need the group or a higher power. And don't get me wrong, I always need my higher power, but I'm not as nearly as spiritual as I was, yet I still have a great life. Okay, so it's not the necessity of the higher power, but it's about changing the self, developing the self sufficiently. For me, initially, it was through the higher power, and I have all gratitude for that. Don't get me wrong, but I've repaired myself. I've healed myself. A wound can heal if you let it, or something that's broken can be repaired if you fix it. And that also means you don't pull the scab off, because wounds don't heal that way. You let it scab and let it scar. And once something's broken, you don't break it again, because then it requires another fix. Let it stay fixed. All right. So the broken model doesn't work for me, and for most other psychologists, it doesn't work either. And don't get me wrong, I love the 12 steps, but there are pitfalls, and this is one of them: is that you're not broken, or if you are, fix yourself and then be done with it. All right.
Yeah.
I think that.
That's a belief. That's a belief that you have that I also agree with, and that's a belief that they don't subscribe to in 12-step, because when you say the word fixed, they chuckle at it. And they cackle at it like, "Oh, you're fixed. You're fixed, are you?" Right.
Well, they've seen a lot of people. The ego is the worst problem. Is really the problem with the addict. And they see a lot of people, well, all people, coming in there with big egos or egos. We all have egos, which is our self-identity. And they know that it's shrinking of the ego is the solution. So when a person says they're fixed, it could easily be, just being bravado. But the proof is always in the pudding, in everything, Okay. And so humility is not being meek or shy. That's being meek or shy. Humility is knowing yourself. So if you have a strength, hiding it is not humility. That's something else. Okay, let your strengths shine. That's fine. Minimize your weaknesses. And keep going. Now, the final thing I wanted to go. We're going to go into beliefs in a moment. We touched on it, and by the way, we talked about that on this morning's Facebook Live. Again, check out this morning's Facebook Live where I talk about beliefs, and that's what recovery from addiction is all about. It's all about changing your beliefs. I saw that was quite apparent from the early days. It's all changing from the beliefs of an addict to the beliefs of a recovering addict, and quite simply, the addict believes that he or she has to use, and the recovering addict believes he or she doesn't. And that's that simple. But we can get into any other peripheral and linear beliefs, but those are the stem differences that you have to change from one belief to. You must change that belief. But I want to point out, I've got
check out the Facebook Live every day too. We usually have a topic that we touch on briefly, but you usually read from the Achieve Your Dreams calendar.
Right, which I'm about to go into. This box is a box here, but which is from another year. But I wanted to show you. I got these are recovery coins I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you get like one annually. But I'm not in Narcotics Anonymous anymore. But I like to get myself always some coin or some commemoration annually. I just ordered this a few days ago, thanks to Prime. It just came, and it's you can see it. It's 20-year coin. Two X's, Roman numeral X's. And I'm not going to read it, but it's got some cool stuff written on it. If you want to know what it is, send us an email or put it on a comment on our social media, and I'll answer what it says. But I'm very thankful for being clean 20 years, and that I've changed my beliefs, and that I've embraced this most wonderful gift that God has given me. I say that in the most non-religious way possible, and that is the gift of my life. That is the greatest gift I've ever received. And it's the greatest gift that you've ever received. Tommy's ever received. The greatest gift Tommy's ever gotten is Tony Petros's life. I mean that straight out.
I believe it. It's one of them. It's one of them. I love
So,
you, bro. It's
I love
wonderful.
you too, bro. You are the man, and I'm so glad that you came back into my life and that we made this podcast together. Did we this
I know.
two guys coming together, man? So let's make more.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. All right, let's go. Okay, well, enough about that. Shall we go into my corner or your corner first? Do we have a Tony's corner or Tom's corner?
Let's go for you.
Okay, so
Let's go for your corner.
like the Facebook Live, I read from the Achieve Your Dreams calendar, though this is a different box. You can see it here. This one's green, that one's blue. Here's today's passage. I just pulled it from it.
I'm gonna let you go right into it too, because we're like 20 minutes away from the 40-minute mark. I'll cancel that and you just do your thing.
You
know what I mean?
You're not gonna do your reading?
I am gonna do my reading, but instead of interrupting you and letting you know 40 minutes marks, it's 10 seconds away, and then I'll just restart.
Okay, today's passage says, the passage is what saves us is to take a step. What saves us is to take a step, then another step. It is always the same step, but we have to take it. And it's by Antoine De Saint-Exupéry, French. That's great. What saves us is to take a step, then another step. It is always the same step, but we have to take it. This is so true.
One foot in front of the other.
That's it. You know, sometimes I feel tired and fatigued, and we need rest and relaxation. That is a necessity of every person. But we have to also work and labor, and we have to put in dues. And sometimes I may feel like there's too much to do, and overwhelmed. But then I realize, no, I don't. That's not true. All I've got to do is take a step. I've just got to do something. I don't got to do everything. I don't got to do a lot of things. I just got to do something. Something. Okay. It's best to prioritize, but I've just got to take a step. And what it is, it's whatever it is. Your life is complex, and everybody's life is subjective and different, but it just requires the next step. And talking about recovery is based on doing the next right thing. But in life in general, and how I define recovery is life clean. That's how, if you're in recovery or not, just take that next step. Just take that next step. That's all you've got to do. All right. And I'm burning into your psyche. All right.
Yes.
As I burn this paper, what saves us is to take a step. Notice what he said. It's not just about right. It's gonna save you.
Yeah.
That's gonna save you. Okay.
Now,
that's
a step, a singular step,
right,
is also the first recommendation for when you're dealing with procrastination. I have a handout sheet that I got from a group. I don't recall where, and it's all about procrastination. And the first piece of advice and the first rule is do something. Take a step.
Yes.
Don't get overwhelmed and do more than you can handle. Do the littlest thing you can, and that step by step, you will see a change.
Beautiful. But I want to also emphasize what Antoine said there is that's the salvation. Is this is not just what is how to live, but this is what will save you. So when you feel you're floundering, or that you can't make it, or you're so depressed, or you're suicidal at the worst, the absolute depression, what will save you is the next step. What will save you your recovery. Okay. Yeah. And suicide and depression and recovery aside, life for everyone else, and everyone else. Just take that next step, and it's always the same thing, just something else. And if you can come from your better place, better off. But just the next step. Okay, you're up,
it keeps you going. Because it keeps you going. Yeah.
That's it. We must be in motion, but not all the time, but just enough.
Yeah. So here we are in my corner today. This is the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, chapter 13.
Number 13, very good.
Number, chapter, passage. The Tao breaks it down into chapters, which is odd because there's just short sayings. But regardless, it's a chapter, and it begins. I'll read it all the way through so we get a full scope, and then we can dissect. Accept disgrace willingly. Accept misfortune as the human condition. What do you mean by accept disgrace willingly? Accept being unimportant. Do not be concerned with loss and gain. This is called accepting disgrace willingly. What do you mean by accept misfortune as the human condition? Misfortune comes from having a body. Without a body, how could there be misfortune? Surrender yourself humbly. Then you could be trusted to care for all things. Love the world as your own self. Then you can truly care for all things.
Repeat that last line.
The last part is surrender yourself humbly. Then you can be trusted to care for all things.
No, love yourself. The part that's what love yourself.
Okay. Love the world as your own self. Then you can truly care for all things.
Just as we were talking about, love the world as you love yourself. Loving yourself comes first.
Yeah.
Boy, there's no coincidences. That reading is right on about addiction recovery and everything else. A lot of times people talk about addicts like there's some special thing. They're not. They're just people. Got news for you. They're people with a maladaptation. That's all. They're people like everyone else. They just have a very serious maladaptation. And this is right on. And, the greatest skill that every recovering addict must learn is the ability to feel their feelings. That is the greatest skill that they all must do, because that's the main problem. Is their feelings, and also ideas of inadequacy, but that's the great hurdle they have to get over, is the sense of inadequacy or self-worth. Self-worth is more self-worth than anything, but they must feel
alienation too. Alienation was a big one for me.
Totally right on, bro, right on. But you have to be able to feel your feelings. This is paragraph, and this is what this passage is about. And the biggest ones for addicts are shame and guilt and loss. Shame and guilt, because addicts, like other people, but especially addicts, there are a lot of shameful stuff and a lot of guilty stuff. Hey, guess what? When you're messed up and are desperate to get more drugs, you tend to do stuff like that. When you get inebriated, you get to do stuff. You get to do shameful stuff that you would never do ordinarily.
Yeah.
And so if you're not able to reconcile with your shame and guilt, you're screwed. And same thing with loss too. We talked about loss, right, at the beginning of this podcast. Same thing. If you're not able to reconcile with loss, you're screwed, because you're always working from a deficit. But all feelings, he said, you must be able to feel these feelings. And these are just gifts from God, my friend. But when we lost sight of the gift, then we lose sight of these other gifts. The primary gift, again, is your own life, but it's the gifts of these feelings, because that's what makes life so worth living, is the joy, right? The joy you can have in life. But you only know it from the great sadness you can have in life. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a reference. You need a reference. You need to know dichotomies. You need to know opposites in order to know either thing. This is a very Zen thing, but it's also, and it sounds like it's very conceptual, but if you examine it and experience it, it's an experiential thing. Experience it. Great depression when you know great happiness. Ask bipolar people; they'll tell you this better than anybody. But any person can tell you that.
Yeah.
So, but it's to feel these feelings. That's where it's at, and there's various ways to do that. There's a number. I'm not going to get into it now because we've already went with enough time. But there are a number of ways. If you want to know about different ways to feel your feelings, contact me through social media, and I'll be happy to let you know. Great stuff, Tommy. Would you like to talk more about the passage?
The passage.
Yeah,
Let's
you just
see.
read.
Without body, how
I
could there be
I
misfortune?
love the Zen stuff, guys. And you know, I've been attracted to Zen for a long time. I've been reading about it and practicing it on whatever levels for years because stuff like this. I mean, this
Yeah.
stuff just resonates truth. It resonates so. And I'm a Christian, a very unconventional Christian, but I'm
Right.
very Zen, man. This stuff is so obviously true.
I would say this. I'd like to say this real quick about it is that a lot of people in my life, raised Roman Catholic, a lot of people in my circles growing up, didn't understand the appeal it had on me. And I'll say that because
The appeal
it
of
was
what?
always too
Of Zen? The appeal
of Buddhism and Zen. They
Okay.
didn't understand why they just didn't get it, and because they always thought it was too negative. And what I couldn't articulate to them was the negativity is only there to show you the way out, to show you the promise and the joy that comes from letting go of the things that imprison you in your mind. And it says it right here in this passage. It says, accept the misfortunes of the human condition. And he says the body. Misfortune comes from having a body. Without a body, how could there be misfortune? Human suffering. Most of our suffering comes from being alive, having a body. You know, the mind as well. The mind as well. But they were always just like, oh, they just focus on too much suffering. That's the basis of their Four Noble Truths, right?
No.
Life is suffering. The cause. It's like, yes, but there's liberation as a promise if you follow.
Absolutely.
If you follow it to the T. So,
and this is why I'm still a punk rocker at 55, and Tommy still considers himself a punk rocker, is because I love positivity. Well, a primary reason why I love positivity is because I know negativity so damn well. I know it so damn well, man. I can write books on either, but I can write books so much about positivity because I know so much about negativity from my own life and experience and from my own disdain for the world. There was a time in my life where if you would have shown me where the Armageddon button for the world, the button is to blow up the world, I would have pressed it. Blow up that damn, because I hated the world, because I hated myself. Now I love the world, but I love the world because I love myself now. And not in a narcissistic way, but in a way that I've accepted myself, and I love this. I love myself because this is a great gift I've been given, and this is, and I appreciate it. I appreciate this.
I appreciate that. And I also, you know, I wish I could have at the time said something to them like, look at Jesus. Look at Jesus on that cross. He's suffering.
Absolutely.
That's suffering.
Absolutely.
You know, and in order for him to give to us the kingdom of God, he had to suffer on that cross.
Right.
He had to do that. You know, it's not all about the payoff. It's not all about heaven, and it's not all about nirvana. We have to suffer, and we have to pay our dues and do the work.
You gotta pay your dues.
Work in order to be liberated from this human condition, and it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
So you got to take the suffering with the good stuff.
Absolutely. Tommy, another wonderful podcast. I love you, bro. Great stuff. Much love to you.
Too.
Great stuff, man.
Right on, number 13.
Thank you for joining us, viewers and listeners.
Thank you, viewers.
Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe, like, and share this with like-minded people. Stick with us. We will continue to improve and persist. You can do it with us.